Senior national correspondent Kate Snow, who watched that debate with voters, some of whom, Kate, have settled on who they want, some of whom are undecided, but all of them live in the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. You know, my home state, Kate. Talk me through what you're hearing from folks.
That's right. Yeah, and they all live within the confines, right around Pittsburgh, and we're in Pittsburgh right now. And I have to say, this is Allegheny County, Hallie, and you probably know this, but last election, there were 25 municipalities here where the vote was within 5%. So, I mean, it is tight in this county, and you all know that. You all feel that there's a lot of pressure on these swing areas. To be clear, some of you had made up your minds going into the debate. We had two really very much pro-Harris. You were probably for Harris. You guys were you were more unsure. And then we had two people who were really considering Donald Trump, including Brian. And Brian, I want to go to you because it's been fascinating to get your read on what happened tonight. Because it seemed like you went in sort of wanting to like J.D. Vance and thinking about Trump.
Yeah, so I really did. You're right about that. He just danced around a lot of questions. I think I said earlier that, you know, Walz was sort of like placating to the people, and Vance was just sort of dancing around questions. So, you know, my opinion on things really hasn't changed too much tonight, but...
You're drawn to Trump because of economic considerations.
Definitely.
That's the big thing for you.
Yeah.
But everything else, it seems like you're maybe drawn to Harris.
Yes, certainly. So very sort of socially liberal, I guess. I mean, I thought if you were going to say who won tonight, I would say that Tim Walz won.
I wonder, would everybody say that Walz won this debate? Show of hands. No pressure. Okay. Not sure, Claire. Claire, you win.
I don't know what it means to win a debate.
Yeah, well, that's true.
I don't know what that definition is.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. Who you thought did better, I guess I should say. But you came into this not knowing. You said to me a few minutes ago, you're still not sure who you're going to vote for. You may not vote at all. And I remember during the big section of the debate that was about abortion, you were having some strong reactions to some of that.
Again, it's very hard to look at two men telling you what to do. Decisions are between a woman and her doctor, and there should be no one that interferes with that. And I think it's just kind of ridiculous that we are even in support. If Donald Trump or Joe Biden cared about this country, neither one of them would have won for election, right? We wouldn't be in this situation. They're 80 years old. Joe Biden has already, you know, rescinded his nomination and everything. So we're talking about two people who probably should have run at all. And we're talking about two parties who gave us two candidates. Like, again, if you cared about us, we're like, oh, does that person care about me? No, they don't, because they wouldn't be there if they did. And they would have passed the torch to someone who is younger, is more capable, is less volatile. It could have won a real
true.
Did
pass the torch to Harris ultimately.
Right, but that's not like I didn't get a really vote for anyone in a primary election for either candidate and stuff. Like, don't we love seeing a big panel of Democratic Party, you know, candidates and a big panel of Republican Party candidates and making our own choices? Instead, we again got handed two people, and that was our decision. It's not like we had a real political discourse or rhetoric around who was going to be our next president.
Meryl, you were really reacting to the very end of the debate when they were talking about January 6th, and they were talking about what happened on that day. And you're a very pro-Harris person, even coming in tonight. So what was it that was bothering you as you watched that?
So what really bothered me was how J.D. Vance pivoted the question and turned it into, you know, really defended Donald Trump's position on January 6th. And the fact that he tried to avoid the answer, but it was really more about not recognizing. You know, I wear this yellow pin for the hostages that are being held in Gaza. Donald Trump calls the insurrectionists that have been jailed after court trials they're now being jailed in Washington. He calls them hostages. I find that incredibly, incredibly offensive. They're not hostages. They're prisoners. They're people who were convicted and put in jail. And they were convicted of causing an insurrection, of violating the Capitol, of the people's house, and that there's even an attempt to justify that or turn it into something, calling them patriots, I find incredibly, incredibly offensive.
John, I think you had a similar reaction.
Yeah, the one point I thought was telling was that J.D. Vance tried to say that he was defending Trump's right. He wanted to have a debate in the public square. And then January 20th happened, and he left the office, and he completely yada-yada'd the insurrection at the Capitol. And I thought it was interesting that in his argument for having that debate, he says that it's our freedom of speech to allow misinformation, which it was interesting because most of his responses I thought were, he sounded well, he's very well poised, but they were like dodges and mistruths. And he got away with that throughout the night. Whereas Walz, I thought, responded very quickly with interesting points, with statistics and actual facts that supported his argument.
Rona, I want to ask you, because on the issue of Israel and foreign policy, you were thinking about voting for Trump. You said a couple of weeks ago you were really strongly considering voting for Trump, and now you're not so sure. What did you not hear tonight? Was there something J.D. Vance could have said to make you go, yeah, that's what I'm doing?
I mean, I think that if either of them would have made very, very clear statements about support for our strongest ally in the Middle East, support for Israel, about ending any kind of appeasement policy toward Iran or toward other Islamist regimes, toward ensuring that we are, well, he did say, I mean, Vance said peace through strength. I mean, obviously it's just like a slogan, but to the extent that that there is a party that would actually live that slogan, that's something that I find really, really valuable and something that I would be paying attention to. Getting the American hostages out, I mean, the reality is I don't know if Trump would have done a better job, but we have had a Biden administration, and there are American hostages, not just Israeli hostages. There are American hostages that are languishing in Gaza. There are Americans who have been killed in Gaza, and I don't think the administration is doing anywhere near enough to get them out.
I should mention that both Rona and Merrill, you're part of the Jewish community here in Pittsburgh, which is a sizable community for the size of the city that it is. I want to turn to you, Brandon, because you were basically with Harris. You feel even more strongly that way, I think, if I'm reading you right, after the debate. And you were talking to me about immigration because you work with nonprofits who help immigrants, among other things, right? You work with a lot of different nonprofits in town. What did you hear on housing and the immigrants' effect on housing that you were talking to me about, how you didn't appreciate that?
Well, number one, Vance akin immigration to the housing crisis, which is, in my opinion, dishonest. That is not something that is prevalent to affect everybody across the board. What's happening here is he's putting more fear on this, and he's only talking about the southern border. And when I hear the southern border, obviously I hear the Latino community. So that's just more fear-mongering. What we see is people trying to acquire equity. What we see is people trying to buy a home, people who are trying to avoid experiencing homelessness, and unfortunately, that's not directly linked to the immigration in the way that Vance is talking about it, because the illegal immigrants are not sitting in the C-suites denying home loans. They're not sitting in the C-suites denying these opportunities where people are trying to get equity, where people are trying to put their family in a safe environment, because being housed goes beyond just simply having a home, but it goes to being safe also. Brandon, thank you. Thank you to all of you for staying up really late tonight. Hallie, I have to say, this is a late night for everybody. It's not a scientific sample, but it's interesting to hear what a group of people thought.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or follow us on social media.